I was 29, fresh off a dead-end job, and desperate to escape the suffocating walls of my tiny apartment. So when I found a 2-story colonial in a quiet suburb, I jumped at it. The house was a wreck, peeling paint, a sagging porch, windows that rattled in the wind, but the price was a steal. I saw it as a blank canvas, a place to rebuild my life. My girlfriend, Sarah, wasn't sold. She stood on the cracked driveway, arms crossed, staring at the house like it was staring back. "This place feels wrong," she said. I laughed it off. Bad vibes? Come on. I was practical, not superstitious, but looking back, I should have listened. We moved in on a chilly October evening, our stuff piled into cardboard boxes that cluttered the living room. The air inside was stale, heavy with the smell of dust and old wood. We didn't have furniture yet, so we threw a mattress on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked dreams of a fresh start. That first night, I noticed a faint hum, like a fridge running in another room. I figured it was the ancient heating system, or maybe the pipes groaning. Old houses have quirks, right? Sarah slept fitfully, tossing and turning, but I chalked it up to the unfamiliar space. Around 2 a.m., she shook me awake, her voice a tight whisper. "Do you hear that?" I strained my ears. The hum was there, steady, but nothing else. "It's just the house settling," I said, rubbing sleep from my eyes. She shook her head, eyes wide in the dark. Number footsteps. Upstairs. Slow, like someone's pacing. Her fear was contagious, but I forced a smile, grabbed a flashlight, and climbed the creaky stairs. The hallway was empty, the bedrooms bare except for dust motes swirling in the beam of light. No footprints, no signs of anyone. I checked the windows, locked tight. "See? Nothing," I called down. But Sarah didn't come upstairs that night. She stayed curled up on the mattress, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I threw myself into renovations to distract us both. The walls were stained yellow, the floors scuffed and warped, but I saw potential. Sarah, though, kept pointing out oddities, a faint scratch mark on the basement door like fingernails had clawed at it, a locked attic hatch with a rusted padlock we couldn't open, a cold spot in the dining room that made your breath catch. I dismissed it all. Old houses have history, I told her. They're bound to feel a little weird, but she wasn't convinced, and her unease started to wear on me. That night, the hum changed. It wasn't just a background noise anymore. It felt alive, like the house was breathing. A slow, rhythmic inhale and exhale pulsed through the walls, vibrating in my chest. I lay awake, listening, trying to convince myself it was the wind. But the trees outside stood still, their branches unmoving in the moonlight. Sarah heard it too. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "What is that?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. We stayed in the living room again, too spooked to climb the stairs. The breathing faded by dawn, but neither of us slept. Over the next week, things got stranger. I'd wake up to find cabinet doors swung open, their hinges creaking softly. Lights flickered, even after I replaced the bulbs. My tools, hammer, screwdriver, tape measure, kept moving. I'd leave them on the kitchen counter, only to find them on the dining room table, or once, in the middle of the living room floor, arranged in a neat circle. Sarah swore she wasn't touching them, and I believed her. She was spending more time outside, avoiding the house entirely. "It's like it's watching us," she said one evening, her voice trembling. I wanted to argue, but I'd started feeling it too. A prickling on the back of my neck, like eyes following me from room to room. Sarah threw herself into researching the house's history, desperate for answers. She found old records at the county library, piecing together a story that made my stomach twist. The house had belonged to a man named Harold in the 80s, a recluse who rarely left. Neighbors said he was strange, always muttering about keeping the house happy. He died there, alone, of a heart attack. No family, no friends, just him and the house. The records didn't say much else, but Sarah found a forum post from a former neighbor who claimed Harold believed the house was alive, that it needed him. I laughed it off, but the words stuck with me. Needed him for what? The next night, Sarah stayed at her mom's, saying she needed a break from the house. I didn't argue. She looked exhausted, her eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. Alone, I kept working on the upstairs hallway, painting over the faded wallpaper. Around midnight, the breathing started again, louder, more insistent. Then came a new sound, a low, guttural moan from the attic, like someone in pain. My paint roller froze, dripping onto the drop cloth. The moan came again, followed by a heavy thud, like a body hitting the floor. My heart hammered, but I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed a crowbar from my toolbox and climbed the stairs to the attic hatch. The The padlock was rusted, but it gave way with a screech. The attic air was thick, choking, like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. My flashlight barely cut through the dark, revealing only dust and cobwebs. But the floorboards were wrong, covered in deep scratches, gouges that formed jagged, nonsensical patterns. Some looked fresh, the wood splintered and raw. I traced one with my finger, and the breathing stopped. The silence was worse. I backed out, heart pounding, and locked the hatch behind me. I called a contractor the next day, hoping for a rational explanation. He checked the pipes, the foundation, the attic. Nothing. Old houses make noises, he said, but he hesitated when he saw the attic scratches. You might want to get those checked, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. I didn't press him. That night, I stayed up, determined to catch whatever was happening. Around 3 a.m., the breathing returned, so loud it rattled the windows. I pressed my ear to the living room wall, and I swear I heard a heartbeat. Faint, steady, like it was part of the house itself. My skin crawled, and then came the whisper. My name, soft and deliberate from the attic. Stay, it said. I stumbled back, my breath catching. It spoke again, clearer. You belong here. I didn't sleep. I packed a bag and left at dawn, crashing at a friend's place. Sarah and I fought when I told her what happened. She thought I was losing it, or worse, that I was trying to scare her. She refused to come back, and I didn't blame her. I hired a home inspector, thinking maybe there was mold or something messing with my head. He found nothing, no leaks, no toxins, just an unusually high electromagnetic field in the attic. He couldn't explain it. Neither could I. Desperate, I contacted a local historian who knew more about Harold. She told me he'd been obsessed with the house, spending all his money on repairs, talking to it like it was a person. He said it chose him, she told me over coffee, her voice low. He believed it needed someone to stay, to keep it alive. She paused, then added, the house was built on old farmland, but there's a story, unconfirmed, that the land was cursed, tied to some ritual gone wrong in the 1800s. Harold thought he was protecting something. I didn't know what to make of it, but the word cursed lodged in my brain like a splinter. I went back one last time, against my better judgment, to grab the rest of my stuff. The house was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. As I packed, I heard it again, the breathing, slow and deliberate, coming from every wall. I dropped a box, dishes shattering, and ran to the front door. It wouldn't open. The knob turned, but the door felt glued shut, like the house was gripping it. Panic surged, and I kicked at it, shouting, until it finally gave way. I didn't look back as I sped off. Sarah and I broke up a month later. She couldn't handle my obsession with the house, and I couldn't let it go. I sold it at a loss, the realtor barely asking questions. The new owners didn't last long. They moved out after a week, saying the house felt alive. I still get emails from the realtor asking if I know anything about why no one stays. I don't reply. Sometimes I dream of that house, the breathing filling my ears, the walls closing in. I wake up gasping, checking my door to make sure it's not locked. I don't know what that house was, Harold's madness, a curse, or something else entirely. But I know one thing, it wanted me to stay, and I'm terrified it still does. I'd been saving for years to get out of our rundown apartment, so when Lena and I found a split-level house in a sleepy little town, it felt like a miracle. The place was modern, with big windows, a wraparound deck, and a backyard big enough for our dog Max to run wild. The realtor called it a quick sale because the previous owners had to move for a job. The price was a steal, and I could already picture barbecues, lazy Sundays, maybe even a kid or two down the line. Lena was all in, her eyes sparkling as we signed the papers, but the moment we stepped inside with our keys, something felt off, like the house was holding its breath, waiting. The first thing I noticed was the den off the kitchen. It was a small room, all glass, with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in so much light it should have felt warm and inviting. Instead, it was cold, not just in temperature, but in a way that made my skin prickle. I'd walk in to drop off a box, and it was like someone was staring at me, their gaze heavy and unblinking. Lena felt it too. She'd linger at the doorway, never stepping fully inside. "It's just new house jitters," I said, trying to laugh it off. Max, though, was the real tell. He'd plant himself at the den's entrance, growling low, his eyes fixed on the empty room. We chalked it up to him adjusting, but his hackles stayed up, and he'd whine if we tried to coax him inside. We spent the first week unpacking, painting, trying to make the place ours. But the den was always there, like a splinter in my mind. I'd catch myself avoiding it, taking the long way around to the kitchen. At night, Lena and I would lie in bed and I'd hear her whisper, "Do you feel it too?" I didn't want to admit it, but I did. The house was fine, cozy even, but that room felt like it didn't belong, like it was separate, watching us settle in, judging us. The dreams started a few nights in. I'd find myself standing in the den, alone, in the dark. The windows weren't reflective like they should be. They were black, like pools of ink, and shapes moved in them. Vague, human-like outlines that didn't match my own. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Lena had the same dreams, down to the inky windows and the shapes. We didn't talk about it much. Saying it out loud felt like inviting something in. Instead, we focused on normal stuff, hanging curtains, planting flowers, anything to keep our minds off that room. About 2 weeks in, things got worse. I started hearing whispers at night, soft and garbled, like a conversation just out of earshot. They always came from the den. I'd get up, flashlight in hand, and check, but the room was always empty, the windows glinting under the beam. One night, Max woke us up, barking like he'd seen the devil. He was at the den's doorway, teeth bared, staring into the dark. I flipped the light switch, but it wouldn't turn on. The bulb was fine. I checked, but the room stayed dark, the windows swallowing the moonlight. Then I saw it. A shadow in the corner, taller than me, solid and human-shaped. It didn't move, just stood there, watching. I blinked, and it was gone. Max pressed against my legs, whimpering, and I backed out, my mouth dry. I told Lena we should move, but she dug in her heels. We'd poured everything into this house, our savings, our hopes. She wasn't ready to give up, so I started digging into the house's past, hoping for answers. The realtor had lied about the previous owners. They hadn't moved for work. They'd left after their teenage daughter, Claire, disappeared. The police report said she was last seen in the house, but there was no evidence of foul play, no blood, no signs of a struggle. The neighbors were tight-lipped, but one older woman across the street, Mrs. Hargrove, gave me a look that chilled me. "That room," she said, pointing at our den. "It doesn't like strangers." I didn't know what to make of that, but the whispers were getting louder, clearer. One night I caught a word. "Look." It came from the den, soft but insistent, like a plea. I set up a cheap security camera, pointing it at the windows, recording overnight. The next morning I checked the footage. At 3:17 a.m., something moved, not outside, but inside the room. A figure, tall and thin, glided across the den, pausing to face the camera. Its face was blurred, like the tape couldn't hold its shape. I showed Lena, and she went pale, her hands shaking. "That's Claire," she whispered. She'd found a photo of the girl online, part of a missing persons flyer. The figure's outline matched, same height, same slight frame. We stopped using the den after that. I moved the furniture out, locked the door, and told Lena we'd pretend it didn't exist. But the house felt different, heavier, like it was sulking. Max wouldn't go near the kitchen anymore, and he'd whine at night, staring at the locked den door. The dreams got worse too. Now, I'd see Claire in them, standing in the den, her back to me, her hair long and tangled. She'd turn, but her face was wrong, blank, like a smudge where features should be. She'd point at the windows, and I'd wake up screaming. I called a local pastor, hoping he could bless the house or something. He walked through, prayed, but when he reached the den, he stopped cold. "There's something here," he said, his voice tight. "It's not angry, but it's waiting." He wouldn't explain, just left a card for a medium and told us to call her. The medium, a woman named Marta, came the next day. She didn't bring crystals or sage, just walked the house in silence. In the den, she froze, her eyes fixed on the windows. "She's here," Marta said. "She's trapped, tied to this room. She wants you to see her." I asked who she was, but Marta just shook her head. "Don't open the windows," she warned before leaving. That night, I woke to find Lena in the den, standing in front of the locked door. She'd picked the lock, and she was staring at the windows, her breath fogging the glass. "She wants to be seen," Lena murmured, her voice flat like she was in a trance. I grabbed her arm, and she blinked, confused, like she didn't know how she got there. I dragged her out, locked the door again, and boarded up the den's windows the next day. The watching feeling stopped, but the house felt wrong, like we'd insulted it. Max started scratching at the walls, his paws bloody from digging at the plaster. The whispers didn't stop. They moved, coming from different rooms, always saying, Look, I contacted Mrs. Hargrove again, begging for more information. She told me the previous owners had seen Claire in the den too, always at night, always by the windows. They'd tried to sell the house before she vanished, but no one would buy it. That room takes what it wants, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to believe her, but I couldn't deny what I'd seen on the camera, what I'd felt. I set up more cameras, one in every room, and caught glimpses of the figure, always fleeting, always blurred, but always in the den, even with the windows boarded. We moved out a week later, leaving most of our stuff behind. The house sold at a loss, and the new owners didn't last long. They tore it down a year later, citing structural issues, but I heard rumors they couldn't stand the den either. I kept the camera footage, and sometimes, late at night, I watch it. The figure's still there, gliding across the screen, pausing to look at me. I don't know if it's Claire or something wearing her shape, but I know it's still watching, waiting for someone to look back. After my divorce, I needed a fresh start, a place to rebuild myself from the ground up. The bungalow I found was perfect, at least on paper. It sat on the edge of a quiet rural town, surrounded by fields and whispering pines. The house was old, with weathered clapboard siding and a stone fireplace that promised cozy winter nights. It was small, just right for me, and the price was low enough to leave room for renovations. The neighbors welcomed me with casseroles and smiles, though they mentioned the house had quirks, flickering lights, creaky floors, nothing unusual for a place built in the 1940s. I was ready to make it mine, to fill it with new memories. But from the first night, I knew something wasn't right. I moved in during a humid August dusk, my pickup truck loaded with boxes and secondhand furniture. The air inside was heavy, like the house hadn't been aired out in years. I opened every window, but the breeze didn't help. As I unpacked, I kept catching myself pausing, listening, like I was waiting for a sound I couldn't name. That night, as I lay on a creaky bed frame in the master bedroom, I heard it. A soft giggle, like a child playing nearby. It was faint, coming from the direction of the living room. I sat up, heart thudding. I lived alone. No kids, no pets, just me. I grabbed my phone, using its light to check the house. Every room was empty, the windows still open, the night outside silent, except for crickets. I told myself it was my imagination, but sleep didn't come easy. The giggles returned the next night, clearer, like they were inside the walls. I'd hear them around midnight, sometimes followed by light, scampering footsteps, like a small child running across the floorboards. I checked every inch of the house, closets, crawl spaces, even under the furniture. Nothing. The sounds always stopped when I got close, like whatever was making them knew I was listening. I started leaving lights on, hoping it would help me feel less exposed, but the house seemed to soak up the light, leaving shadows that felt too sharp, too deliberate. By the third day, I was jumpy, snapping at nothing. I threw myself into fixing the place up, painting the faded walls, sanding the floors, anything to keep my mind busy. But the house fought me. Nails popped out of boards I'd just hammered. Paint cans tipped over when I left the room. Once, I found my toolbox open, the tools scattered across the kitchen floor like someone had been playing with them. I called an electrician, thinking maybe faulty wiring was messing with my head. He found nothing wrong, but he lingered by the fireplace, frowning. "This house feels heavy," he said before leaving. I didn't ask what he meant. The giggles turned into whispers a week in. Not words at first, just a soft, breathy sound, like someone murmuring secrets through the walls. I'd press my ear to the plaster, trying to make sense of it, but it always faded when I got too close. One night I woke to my name, spoken clearly in a small, high voice. "David," it said from the bedroom wall. Not angry, not sad, just curious, like a kid testing if I was awake. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The voice came again, softer. "David, play with me." I didn't move until dawn, too scared to even turn on the light. I started asking neighbors about the house. Most gave vague answers, saying it had been empty for years, but Tom, an old farmer who lived down the road, was more open. Over coffee on his porch, he told me about the family who lived there in the 1970s, a couple and their daughter, Emily, about 6 years old. She vanished one winter, no trace, no clues. The parents were devastated, left soon after. Folks said Emily loved hide and seek, Tom said, his eyes distant. She'd crawl into tight spaces, closets, under floorboards. They never found her. Some think she's still in there, hiding. He didn't smile when he said it. The whispers grew more frequent, more insistent. I'd hear them in different rooms, Kitchen, bathroom, even the tiny laundry nook. Always my name, always that same small voice. I started noticing other things. My keys moved from the counter to the coffee table. My coffee mug, washed and dried, left neatly by the sink when I'd left it dirty. My shoes, usually kicked off haphazardly, lined up by the front door. It wasn't malicious. It felt like someone was trying to help, to be part of my life. But it wasn't comforting. It was wrong. I bought audio recorders, desperate to prove I wasn't crazy. They caught the giggles, the footsteps, and one night, a clear voice saying, "Don't leave me." I played it back, my hands shaking. It was a child, no question, her tone pleading, like she was scared I'd abandon her. I showed the recording to Tom, and he went pale, swearing it sounded like Emily. "She was a sweet kid," he said, his voice cracking. "Always wanted someone to play with." I didn't know what to do with that, but the idea of a little girl stuck in my house, alone, made my chest ache. I called a priest, hoping he could do something, anything. He walked through the house, sprinkling holy water, but when he reached the fireplace, he stopped, his face tight. "There's a sadness here," he said, "something unfinished." He suggested a medium, and I called her the next day. Her name was Clara, an older woman with sharp eyes and no nonsense. She didn't burn sage or chant. She just stood in each room, silent, like she was listening. In the living room by the fireplace, she froze. "She's here," Clara said. "A child. She's not angry, but she's lonely. She's trapped, tied to this house." I asked if it was Emily, and Clara nodded. "She doesn't know she's gone. She thinks you're her friend." That night, I heard the voice again, louder, from the fireplace. "David, stay." I didn't sleep. I started researching the house's history myself, digging through old newspapers online. I found articles about Emily's disappearance, her parents' frantic search, the town's grief. One detail stuck out. The fireplace had been sealed up after they left, like they couldn't bear to look at it. I didn't know why, but it felt important. I hired a contractor to check the fireplace, hoping for answers. He was skeptical, but agreed to look. When he pried open the bricks, he found a hidden compartment, sealed tight with mortar. Inside was a child's blanket, faded and dusty, wrapped around a small porcelain doll, and a locket engraved with Emily. No bones, no body, just those items, like a shrine. The air in the house shifted when he pulled them out, like a sigh of relief. The giggles stopped, the whispers faded, but the house felt emptier, like something vital had left. I tried to stay, but I couldn't. Every creak, every shadow felt like Emily, watching, waiting for me to play. I moved out a month later, leaving the blanket and locket with Tom, who promised to keep them safe. The house is for sale again now, but no one stays long. I still hear her sometimes in quiet moments. A soft giggle, a whisper of my name. I don't know if she's still in those walls hiding, or if she finally found someone to play with, but I know I'll never go back.